Good evening, my fellow belters, dusters, and earthers. I'm back to review episode 10 of season 2 of The Expanse, an episode called Cascade, for reasons that will be obvious as I get into the recap in a little bit. But before I get into the review and the recap and all that good stuff, we had some great news recently that we're getting season 3 of The Expanse on the Sci-Fi Channel, which is awesome news for fans, and it's definitely a sign that this show is finding an audience. However, I have been reading a lot of reviews online that the audience for this show hasn't reached a point where sci-fi can make huge long-term gambles on this show, which I imagine affects the show creatively. If we, as fans, hardcore fans and viewers, could get a few more friends each to watch or to talk about or promote or blah blah blah, I have a feeling this show could easily have a way bigger audience than it currently enjoys, which would allow sci-fi to plan a few seasons down the road as opposed to what's right in front of them. And I think creatively long term, that'll also help the show, because if you know certain payoffs are coming, then you can structure everything accordingly. It just gives the writers more freedom, helps them deliver a better show. So I think we, as the Expanse community, all need to do a little bit more to help spread the word, because let's make this show a big goddamn hit and enjoy it for many years to come. So that's the end of my little rant. But let's talk about episode 10 of season 2. So this episode has two main thrusts. We've got Bobby on Earth and basically trying to figure out where her loyalties lie, and people trying to figure out what's the truth and what she might be holding back. And then we have Holden and his crew trying to help Prax on Ganymede find his little girl, May. And both stories had some cool stuff happen. I wouldn't say this was necessarily the best episode I've ever seen, but I was into it. And yeah, after my review and recap, I'll go into a little bit of the structure of the show versus the books, but I know some people don't like to hear a word about the books, and so I'm just going to stay focused on the show as it stands. So let's talk about what happened on Ganymede first, because for me, my favorite part of this episode is watching Amos and Prax have their ethical conversations, because Amos, he might lack some empathy, and he might even lack a bit of a moral core, but what he does have is loyalty, and what he does have is great friends. And he kind of looks to Naomi and Holden to do the good things, and he just watches their back. And so he explains to Prax, look, I'm going to watch your back, but those two are going to find your little girl. And it's interesting seeing how Amos is not a good guy, but he's kind of a bad guy that works for the good guys, which is what, for me, makes him one of my favorite characters, both in the show and in the books. The big thing they do on Ganymede this episode is they go see a guy named Roma, who basically, he's like a black market guy. He provides lots of services and information in exchange for weapons and food and medicine and resources and that sort of thing. And he has the ability to basically go through all Ganymede's records and look for May. But he starts negotiating for a chicken. And, Naomi is starting to have some reservations about some of the things they've done. And Holden maybe is slightly more willing to test the boundaries. But Amos isn't about to put up with any of this shit. Amos has got some issues where anytime children come up, he tends to go absolutely batshit insane. So he grabs a can of Spam, basically, starts nearly beating this guy to death. And finally, Roma agrees to help them find the little girl for free. Holden tells Naomi he would have stopped Amos, short of him killing him. But Naomi says, look, every time we do this bullshit, it makes it a little bit easier to indulge in it the next go around. So clearly Naomi's got some scruples that she's having a tough time dealing with some of these various moral crises they encounter as they try to get things done. When Prax corners Amos about his actions, Amos basically explains that where he is from, and if you read the book The Churn, which is a novella, you'll learn all about his background. He basically says that guys like Roma, where he's from, take children and turn them into prostitutes, and they abuse them, and they sell them to people that do horrible things to them. So he's got zero sympathy for guys like Roma who try to exploit children for his own profit. So yeah, while Amos might appear calm, inside he's boiling with rage about somebody trying to take advantage of a little girl's misfortune, which is why Amos decided to unleash hell on this guy. But the big revelation is when Prax and Amos are looking at essentially the resources of Ganymede and how it's all structured. And this is when Prax whips out his scientific side and starts talking about cascades. And he starts talking about ecosystems. And this is what makes this show so damn cool, is we actually get some real science and some real science fiction amidst all the shooting and monsters and spaceships and all that other stuff that we know and love. Like in nature, when you have an ecosystem, there's a little give and take, and there's cushion. If something goes wrong, if something is removed or something is added, it tends to adapt and change. But he says in an artificial ecosystem, anytime something changes or is removed or runs out, it creates a cascade, and these cascades start testing all the other underlying systems. And as those underlying systems fail, they start testing other systems, and eventually you have a cascade of failure. And he essentially points out that while Ganymede on the surface appears to be a crisis zone that might be salvaged, he basically says that Ganymede's already dead, just no one knows it yet, and that its future as a resource for providing food to the solar system is over. That is not going to recover at all, which obviously someone in his position as a botanist, he knows these things. So yeah, Ganymede is about to get way worse before it ever has a hope of getting better. So Roma does find May, and he sees that she's been escorted to the oldest part of the station, past the point where there are any cameras. So he sends them on their way, letting them know that that is where May will be. And meanwhile, poor Alex, who's all alone on the Rocinante out in space, he's just rocking out to Hank Williams, the song "I'm So Lonesome I Could Cry." It's actually maybe the best scene of the episode, where he's kind of floating around and drinking things and just, he's a country boy. He grew up on Mars, but he loves the country thing and the country accent and the country music and all that good stuff. But then he sees that Mars and Earth have declared Ganymede a no-fly zone, which is going to make his rescue attempt pretty complicated later on. So let's get back to what was going on Earth in this episode. The big thing is that Christian, I call her Christian in previous episodes, but it's Chris Yen, it's Jen. She knows that Bobby's withholding information, and not because she wants to, but because she's being ordered to by the Martians. Bobby, meanwhile, is also in trouble with the Martians and essentially kind of placed under, she's not in prison, but she's kind of locked in her room. She decides to break out of her window and go explore Earth because she wants to see the ocean for the first time. And while she's totally panicking because she can't handle looking at the sky and breathing the open air, she finds a local who wants to be a doctor who helps her get her bearings. She eventually finds the ocean. Meanwhile, Aaron Wright meets with Christian and admits that Jules Pierre Mao and he have been developing secret experimental weapons using the protomolecule as a jumping off point. They're essentially creating these prototypes, and he realizes now what a mistake he made in allying himself with Mao, but that it's time to take action because he feels that the crisis on Ganymede was started by Mao releasing one of his experimental weapons into the field to see what happens. So Christian and her henchmen, they go out and they find Bobby. They show her this diagram of what it was that she actually encountered and encourage her to join their side in the fight. Obviously, Bobby's very, very conflicted because she is a Martian and thinks that Earthers are her enemy. The episode draws to a close with Bobby's fate very much in doubt. Now, I want to talk about some changes or some issues comparing the books and the show. So if you don't hear that, abort now, but I'll just wrap up saying thoroughly enjoyed this episode. Wasn't my favorite, wasn't my least favorite. It was a very good episode. Moved things along, and we've only got episodes 11, 12, and 13 to go, and I'll be sad when it's over. But as far as the books are concerned, I do want to bring up one thing. At the pace they are going, I don't know if they're going to remove large chunks or accelerate things, but man, this whole storyline with Bobby, I mean, we're basically at the point where she was like a quarter of the way through the second book, Caliban's War. And by this point, she'd already seen the video footage of what she faced, and she was less conflicted, less confused, less adrift. I'm not into the idea of Bobby at all being so helpless and lost and confused because she was just so assertive and in control in the book. Granted, they've decided to go a different direction with the character, and maybe she will finally assert herself once everything is made clear to her. But man, I really like the idea of Bobby being much more in control, even if she's suffering post-traumatic stress from the loss of her unit and her friends and that sort of thing. Because in the book, she's obviously very, very messed up. She's like cleaning and reloading her weapons way too many times. I mean, she's having a total freak out. At the same time, though, she's gathering information and making decisions. And for me, she's a more interesting character in the book. I just like her that way. But fingers crossed, they're going to get around to it. But I just worry that at the pace they're telling the story, we won't get to the end of Caliban's War until the end of Season 3, which is fine. I mean, now that I kind of know that Season 3 is on its way, I can live with it. I wouldn't have minded a slightly faster pace. I would love it if they would actually show the damn video footage on her armor so we could at least see the battle against that protomolecule creature, because as written, it's a really, really cool battle scene. And I want to see it. Maybe I'm just a spoiled brat. Maybe I'm just a a needy fan. But I want to see that crucial part of book 2, and I just hope they're not gonna basically screw us out of ever getting a chance to see it. Also, if they're not gonna show us that, how are they gonna show us all the insane stuff that happens toward the end of Caliban's War? I mean, the end of Caliban's War is madness. It's like, well, anyway, at this point, you shouldn't be listening to this unless you've read the book. But better, maybe it's better if I don't say anything. But if you've read book 2, you know that the end of it is it's big, and so I just hope they're not going to deprive us of that stuff. At any rate, it's always a pleasure watching the show. It's always a pleasure ranting and raving about what I like and what I don't like. And yeah, I'll be, while I might complain here and there, I'll miss having the privilege of complaining when the season draws to a close. And, I've always got the books to dig into, many more books on the way, and many more books that I have not read yet. So thank you so much for watching. Please feel free to leave some comments below and give me a shout on Twitter at Colbrax if you want to talk more. And yeah, until next week. I don't have a good expression for wrapping up these videos. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it.